Okay, so this is going to be my recap of Alias Grace, part 6. This is the final part. So we find out who Dr. Jordan was meeting. It was Grace's attorney. He actually represented Grace and McDermott, which he later admitted was a conflict because Dermott later changed his testimony.
You acted for both Grace Marks and James McDermott, I believe.
Yes, though that was wrong in retrospect, as their interests were in conflict.
And of course, Dr. Jordan wanted to know why he changed his testimony. And we get the impression that Grace was tried first. And he said that he thought that because Grace's sentence was commuted from death to life, that he would get the same. But when he didn't, it seemed like that's when he changed his story.
Why did McDermott take so long to accuse Grace, I wonder?
Well, until the very last, he was hoping for a commutation since she had been given one.
And we find out that they were never tried for Nancy's murder. And so they had already been tried for Kinnear's murder. They both were convicted and get sentenced to death for Kinnear's murder. And so they didn't feel the need to have another trial for Nancy because they had already got the death sentence. And so he and Dr. Jordan ends up asking her attorney, so do you think she was innocent? He was like, no, of course not.
But in your opinion, she was innocent.
On the contrary, no.
And Dr. Jordan basically said that my concerns are basically I feel like what she tells me has a hint of truth, but I feel like she's still lying to me or, holding something back. And the attorney said, well, maybe she's telling you what she wants you, what she thinks you want to hear in order to, to prolong your session to keep you around longer.
See, perhaps Grace Marks needed to be telling you just what she told you in order to achieve the desired end.
And of course, Dr. Jordan was feigning ignorance, like, well, why would you think that? Well, basically saying that she might, have feelings for you, like she's been locked up for a while and she's been starved of male attention and, maybe, she has some soft feelings towards you.
You are doubtless the object of her waking daydream.
And then he made some comparison to how he felt that Grace behaved with him when he was, going through the trial, saying that her stories would go on and on. Basically, she would drag the stories out so that he would be in her company longer. So now Dr. Grace is back at the house and he notices something different about Grace. Most of her hair is cut off, and he's trying to figure out what happened. And she basically said that at the prison, it was a punishment because they felt that she was talking too much.
I had too many marks against me for talking.
And so Dr. Jordan said, you know what? I guess he felt like he's exhausted every avenue that he has, and so he's willing to take Dr. DuPont up on his offer reluctantly. You can see it you can hear it in his voice.
Dr. DuPont has said he is willing to try hypnosis. All you have to do is sit in a chair and go to sleep when Dr. DuPont tells you to do so.
And so you can hear, so he's going to make an appointment for them to do the hypnosis to see what they can find out. So he sees Grace looking through a keepsake book, and he asked her if she had one of her own, what she would have in it. And as she was, talking about what she would have in it, you can see him kind of looking at, mesmerized by her. And so they end their session, and they pick back up the following day, which is when they're going to meet with Dr. DuPont.
I will see you tomorrow, Grace.
And so he takes her in, hypnotizes her, and he covers her face with this black sheer cloth shawl, something that somebody would wear at a funeral. A widow would have, have her face covered. And so she can still see, and they can kind of barely see her. And so she's now under, and Dr. DuPont is asking Dr. Jordan, what are the questions that you want me to ask her? And so one was, he wanted to start on the outside of the house. So he said, wanted her to picture herself on the veranda, and she's explaining what she saw.
I see flowers.
And then he wanted her to go inside the house and eventually make her way to the cellar.
Tell her to go towards the trapdoor in the hall, the one leading to the cellar.
And so Lydia has this jump scare for some reason. And then she's like, well, I'm scared. I want, she's grabbing Dr. Jordan's hand and saying, somebody open the blinds. And so open the window.
It's like there's a spirit in the room. I'm frightened. Open the drapes.
And so Dr. DuPont's like, well, we can't, disrupt what's going on. Basically, no, we can't do that right now. And so Dr. Jordan ends up asking Dr. DuPont to basically ask if Grace and McDermott ever had an intimate relationship.
Relations.
And this is when Grace's voice changed. And she basically accuses Dr. Jordan of being a hypocrite.
Really, Doctor? You're such a hypocrite. You want to know if I kissed him, if I slept with him, if I was his paramour, is that it?
She ends up calling Lydia a slut, basically saying, basically you're sitting there with this slut holding your hand.
Whether I did what you'd like to do with that little slut who's got hold of your hand.
And she eventually, did answer the question and saying, yes, she did have a situation with McDermott. Now, this is like this weird voice. Now she's possessed at this point. People think she's possessed. And she basically said that she would meet him out into the yard and they would kiss, and that was all that would happen.
Yes. I would meet him outside in the yard.
And that she had both McDermott and Kinnear on a string, and basically McDermott would do whatever she told him to do.
I had him on a string. Mr. Kinnear as well. I had the two of them dancing to my tune.
And then she's saying that, the doc, you're always asking questions. Curiosity killed the cat. And you should be concerned about that mouse sitting next to you and her furry hole or something. And you hear Reverend Veringer kind of chuckle.
You're such a curious man, Doctor. Curiosity killed the cat, you know. You should watch out for that little mouse beside you and her little furry mouse hole, too.
But of course, her mother got upset. It was like, okay, we're going to end this right now. Like, you're not going to be talking about my daughter like that. And so Dr. DuPont got the room under control. And they got back to, asking the questions. And so Dr. Jordan wanted her to go down to the cellar. And she did. And he asked, okay, well, is Nancy there? And now she's asking the questions directly to Grace. And she's responding to him. And she said, oh, yeah, she's there.
Ask her if Nancy was there.
Oh, yes, I saw her.
And of course, he wanted to know, was she alive? She was like, well, she was half dead and half alive. And so he ended up asking her, well, did you strangle her? It was weird because then there was this clip of her helping, you finally see this clip of her participating in helping McDermott strangle Nancy. And then you hear Diana, who I'm assuming is Lydia's mother, saying, you deceived us. All these years, we've been supporting you and you deceived us. And the voice, Grace, is saying, well, you deceived yourselves.
You've deceived yourselves. I am not Grace.
And then another clip ends up, you see another clip, and now McDermott is killing Nancy by himself, and Grace is kind of standing off in the corner, like terrified. And then the next clip, you see her sitting at the kitchen, dining room table, and him coming up and admitting that he had killed Nancy. This is the version of events that she's saying.
Killed her.
Rock of Ages clapped for me.
And so, of course, Dr. Jordan's like, well, who are you? And then she was like, well, I gave you, I told you that I gave Grace the handkerchief.
I told you it was my kerchief. The one I gave to Grace. The one she kept with her after I...
And she started singing a song, and at the end, the last word in the song is Mary. And so, he was like, Mary Whitney. And so, now she's purporting that she is actually not Grace, that this is actually Mary Whitney working through Grace. And that she said that she was the one that told McDermott to do it. And that she was there the entire time.
Not Mary Whitney.
I told James to do it. I was there all along.
And so, obviously, this was a shock to the room, even to Jeremiah. And, Dr. DuPont. And so, eventually, he ends up bringing her out of her, the hypnosis. And, of course, she's feeling like she doesn't understand anything that had happened. And they end up taking her to a room to have her, so she could rest. And so, of course, Dr. DuPont is like, this is, basically saying that they feel that she has multiple personalities.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm at a loss. I believe that these are two distinct personalities.
And so now Dr. DuPont, Dr. Jordan and Reverend Veringer are talking, and basically Dr. Jordan don't know what to believe, and he basically said that he couldn't in good conscience write that report because he wouldn't believe he doesn't believe it because he just still it's still odd. He don't understand what's going on. He doesn't feel like he still has the entire story or the truth, and he doesn't feel comfortable writing a report, releasing her, basically putting his name on the report saying that she's safe to be released.
Dr. Jordan, let us think more on this.
I cannot write the report you desire without perjuring myself.
And so then we go into Dr. Jordan's letter. And so he is basically saying that, I don't know if he was like validating like hypnosis and what he called mesmerism. And he basically said that maybe, it allows women to express thoughts that they wouldn't, otherwise be acceptable for them to express.
I wonder if they provide an opportunity for women to say what they think and to express their true thoughts and feelings more boldly.
And then he said, maybe Grace's childhood, her violent childhood played a role in what happened.
I wonder about Grace's violent childhood and her experience as a young woman.
And maybe, all that rage was directed at Nancy and Kinnear.
Question is, was this rage directed toward Nancy Montgomery and Thomas Kinnear, resulting in their murder?
But in the end, he basically reiterated that he couldn't in good conscience write that report. And then you see Reverend Veringer talking to Grace and basically telling her that Dr. Jordan had left and that he would not be returning. And so, of course, Grace was upset and she felt like they had spent so much time together. And, she had shared so much of her life with him that she would at least get a goodbye.
He will not be returning to Kingston. He is gone.
But then, she was concerned that, she knew he was supposed to write the letter to the governor to determine whether or not that she should be released. And she felt that at that point that he was not going to write the letter.
They also said you were to write a letter to the government on my behalf to set me free. And I became afraid that now you would not do so.
And so you see Dr. Jordan, he's at home and he's still plagued with thoughts of Grace and romantic thoughts of Grace.
Sometimes at night her face floats before me in the dark, like some lovely and enigmatic mirage.
And, the war was happening at this time, and he actually felt a relief to be able to leave and to be able to focus on something, do something else. So, we don't know the timeline, but next thing you know, we see Grace, and I think that was Diane coming to her, telling her partner came through. Now, you can see that she's visibly older. And obviously she was shocked, and, she was happy.
Your pardon has come through from Sir John Macdonald and the Minister of Justice in Ottawa.
And you can see her leaving the prison, and, she basically said that she had some regrets because she had been locked up for almost 30 years, most of her life. She had been locked up. She went in at 16. And so now, she's on a trip with, I'm assuming that was Diane and Dr. Veringer, and she's basically asking where they were going. And she said that it was, a surprise, and that the only thing that they could tell her that it was a friend of hers from her past.
I will tell you that it concerns a man, a gentleman.
And so they get there, and she finally meets the man.
Grace, don't you know me? I would have known you anyway.
Jamie Walsh.
And of course, she was, taken aback. And of course, Jamie apologized to her because it was his testimony that put her behind bars. And he was basically saying that he was young, and the attorneys kind of made him say things. And of course, by her own story about her attorney made her get, the story that she told about her attorney. She understood how things could go, and she actually forgave him, and he proposed to her. And you kind of see her there now. She's now married, and they're going through married life. And she did say that he wanted to hire a woman to come in, and she was like, no, we're not going to do that. She's like, I'd rather take care of my own house.
Mr. Walsh wanted to employ a girl as well, but I said I would prefer to do the work of the house myself.
And you kind of go to Dr. Jordan, and he's back from the war, and the doctor is examining him because he's unresponsive. We don't know if he was injured or if it's just shell shock or whatever, but he's non-responsive, and he's kind of just in this like catatonic state. And the doctor basically told his mother that there's really not a whole lot, it's been years, he hasn't said a word. There's not a whole lot else that I could do for him. And so it really doesn't make any more sense for me to come, to continue to visit him. He's not getting any better. And so, she went in, and when you see him, he looks like, yeah, he's had a hard time.
Simon, how are you feeling today?
And then you see that she's holding a letter from Grace. So you now realize that she's reading this letter to him. And so Grace is finally making her quilt. If you remember in the first episode when he asked her like if she could make a quilt, what kind of quilt she would make. And she said, so she's now making the Tree of Paradise. And she has taken some things that meant pieces of fabric that meant something to her. So it was the red fabric that she got from Mary Whitney's petticoat.
One will be red from the petticoat I still have that was Mary Whitney's.
And it was the white she got from her prison gown.
One will be faded yellowish from my prison nightdress.
And she actually was able to get this material from Nancy Montgomery's dress, that pink dress that she saw when she initially first pulled up to the house.
And the third will be a pale pink cotton cut from the dress of Nancy's.
And so, she made her blanket. And we go back to Dr. Jordan, and his mother is finishing up the letter. And the last thing you hear him say is, Grace's name.
Okay.
And then you go to Grace, and you see her admiring her work, her blanket, and that's pretty much how this episode ends. So, yeah. So in the end, did she participate? Did she not participate? It's still up in the air. I did buy the book, so I'm going to read the book and, compare and see, the stuff that they've left out. But, all in all, it was a really good, series. I actually watched it a couple of times. And, so I'm going to end this here, and I guess I will talk to you guys in the next video.